Okay, we're going to assemble this movement, starting with that jewel on this side of the movement body, I guess you would call it. I tried to show how to lubricate this jewel, but I couldn't get it looking too good. So I'll link you up with one that's on YouTube now. It's about a minute long. It's really close up. Shows you how to do it real nice. I just did that, popped it in there, and took that shock spring and placed it in there. You can see two of the tangs are in the groove, and we just need to drop that third tang into that relief and give it a rotate in the slot, and that should hold it. Hopefully I can do this on the first attempt for you, so bear with me if this takes a little time. Sometimes it can be a bugger or a mule or whatever issues you might be having. Of course, I got so many issues I need a subscription. Okay, now lean on that. Give it a turn. No, nothing. And if you get a little crazy with these, they're going to break. The brass ones are a little more forgiving. The silver colored ones, I believe, are steel. Very brittle. And I've broken my share of them. I think we're in. Let's try to get a close-up on that. Get a little focus. This is the most tedious part, servicing a watch, any watch actually. That top stone is convex on one side and flat on the other. Make sure you put flat side down, convex up top, because it's going to have that rounded appearance. Matches up with that shock spring. If you put one in upside down, you'll know right away. It'll really fight you on that spring. How are we looking? And then we have that relief about 180 degrees across from the other tang. That could use a little bit more of a twist. Center it up. How are we looking? Yeah, maybe nudge it a little more. The nice thing with the wood dowel, it grips that spring pretty good, and you can don't have to worry about it slipping too much. Alright, that looks good. We're going to put that cannon pinion in there with that center gear, but first we have to lubricate that center jewel. There's always a discussion about what kind of lubrication do you use for a watch. And as soon as you open that discussion, you open up a can of worms on what's the best. Honestly, use what works for you. I use all Mobius oils because it seems like it's the industry standard. Which ones do I use for which pivot? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you. It's something to figure out and learn. I do it by reading online. There we go. We got a little bit of lubrication on that. Honestly, I don't think it matters a whole lot with a Russian timepiece. You could probably use olive oil and it would work. That's a joke. Okay, let's start putting this together. We're going to drop that in here. Like I said, don't ask me what that's called. I just know where it goes. It's all clean. It's been dried. I'm going to drop that right in there. Oops, you know what? You dummy. Told you. I ain't a pro. We got to turn this movement over. Drop it in the right way. There you go, genius. Okay. There it is. The cannon pinion we're going to set into a pin vise. What is a pin vise? Pin vise is a handheld, looks like a chuck for a drill bit, tool holder, whatever you want to call it. There it is. There's that cannon pinion chucked into my pin vise, and it is hollow and it's going to be pressed onto that gear. The inside of that is going to get some lubrication because the fit between the two, it kind of snaps together and it has to slip and it has to grip. Okay, I don't know if I can, how can I do this? Might have to do some readjusting here with the camera. Alright, so this might take some time there, people. There's that gear poking through, and we're going to put that on here like so. You can't see this from what I'm doing, but I put the pin vise standing up, holding that cannon pinion, support everything, and then I take, actually I'm using the back end of an oiler while supporting everything, popping that bugger in there. And when you lean on it, you'll hear a pop. I don't know if you heard that pop, but you'll feel it. It'll seat right on there. And when you're done, everything will be held in place. Let's get a better view on this now. We can go back to assembling this movement. Okay. Okay, there's that side. That's rotating in that jewel on the very top. That bearing surface will sit in another jewel on one of the bridges. And then here's the cannon pinion in place. And you can tug on that with your tweezers to, you can see it's got some up and down movement. But once that top bridge is on, all that slop will be taken up. Alright, let's, at this time, what do I like to do? We could do the keyless works. Why not? Put some of those other gears in there. Readjust that so we can gain access to our winding stem, because we're going to put that in there. The winding stem is nice because it makes a nice little handle. These pivots here. There's one right here. There's one here. And one right here. I'm going to put a little bit of lube on each of those. Just a bit. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take much at all. Am I doing this properly? Am I doing this like a pro? Who knows? But it works for me. If it doesn't work for you, find something that does. This pivot right here probably isn't too critical for lubrication. I lubricate it because it is a friction point. That little lever is going to go in there. I don't know what that lever is called, but we're going to drop that in first. Actually, no, we're not. We're not going to do that. See how I get ahead of myself? We have to put a gear in there first. And before we can put a gear in, we got to come over here. That gear is going to fall right through that slot. So, again, not working from a script or reading a teleprompter. Okay, let's assemble this. Let's go with putting that bridge on. Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself. This little gaposis here, that's going to hold the keyless works, the winding gear and the setting gear. So we're going to put that bridge on there so it captures it. One thing we need to put in first, and if you forget now, you'll be kicking yourself later. That little pin we used, took out. I'm going to put a schmear on there. That little pin for taking the stem out, that's got to go first. If you realize later, when you're all done, you're going to be irritated. That sits in there like that. Okay. Pivot for the mainspring. That's all ready to go. I put a schmear of lube on that. Take my mainspring and drop it in. Look at that. That was slick. That engages that gear there. Looks good. And then the very top of that mainspring is the arbor. I like to put a schmear of lubrication as well. Is it too much? Is it too little? I don't know. But it works the way I do it. I've serviced quite a few of these. Okay. This gear has that bearing surface I told you about. That's going to fit into a jewel. That jewel, I'll show you where there it is located right there. We're going to put a schmear of grease on that. By grease I mean lubrication. I'm not going out to my shop and getting some Mobil 1 chassis grease. I call it grease, you can call it oil, you can call it whatever you want. And I'm just going to put a schmear on that first. Get this back into view. And that'll sit on top there. And that's ready to go. Make sure I got a good view here. This sets in rather easily. Well, at least it should. There you go. And then those dowel pins line everything up. And then you can give that mainspring barrel a tug, and you can see that spring, that other gear on that bearing rotating, and it's good to go. Give it a movement here, give it a turn, let you know, hey, there's nothing binding. If you got something binding up, yeah, you're in trouble. Okay, let's screw that down. We're not going to bolt that down, we're going to screw it down. Technically, for it to be a bolt, it must have a nut. If it doesn't have a nut, it's a screw, regardless of the thread or whether it's a hex drive or slot for blade or Phillips head. Little technical issue there. Anybody in the car business says, oh, I gotta change my head bolts because they stretch. Well, technically you don't have head bolts. You got head screws. but you get my drift. I'm just rattling. Now this whole process doesn't take a lot of time when you've serviced a few of these. It's just for this video. It can take time because I want to make sure things are in focus. So I'm looking from the movement to the screen. These don't have to be killer tight. I mean, look how tiny they are. They are little buggers. The click I didn't take apart. The click wasn't dirty. The click actually doesn't need lubrication, although I might put a little smear right around there on that pivot. If you want to, you probably could. I'm sure the pros would have something to say about it, but that's okay. Now's the time we can put the keyless works together, because I like to get that done. There we go. Flip it over. Now we have access to the back side. And you can see when I drop a gear in there through that slot right in here, it's not going to fall through. That bridge is holding on, holding that cavity, closing up that cavity. Okay, this can be a little hairy at times because of that little spring I showed you earlier, but I have a technique that I think works pretty good. We're going to drop that in. It's got that little castellated end to it. Sure, we're going to call it that. That engages and disengages with that other gear. So we drop that in. That doesn't go anywhere. And our winding gear, we're going to drop in. Get over here, you bugger. We're going to drop that in. I got the shakes today. Too much coffee. It is early in the morning. 11:35. Not that early. Maybe I need a drink. Okay. Now you can see those teeth, how they made up and hook up in there. Now if you want, you can put in your winding stem. That's this guy right here. Keeps things lined up. You can see how it slides on that shaft. Alrighty, let's put some other gears in. Since we lubricated these, we'll put that one in, and you can see that engages the cannon pinion for setting the time. Now we got this little critter. It's going to set there. Look at that. Everything's turning, not binding up. Now this little groove right in here, that setting lever is going to sit. I call it a setting lever anyway. I like to put a little grease on that so as to anything that has a friction point should be lubricated. Sometimes it helps lubricate the mechanics, so if you need to, lubricate yourself with a drink. I know it calms me down later in the day. Don't smoke any strong cigars before doing this too, because I tried that one time. Smoked an Age Maduro for about 2 hours. Came in to work on a watch. Good Lord, I couldn't keep still. I had a nice little nicotine buzz going and got the shakes. Okay, that should be enough. We're not building a race car. This little lever, let's get that lined up for you. We're going to drop in there. That lever is directional. You can see how it's got a little bit of a relief cut out right here. That's going to go up. And when you see how it engages this other part, you'll know, hey, you'll know right away if it's upside down. Okay, here's the other part. I'm going to call that the other part today. The pin on the back side engages the stem, and that pin I just set it on is the pin we depress from the other side. Now those two contact points right in here, I like to put a smear of grease. The friction point. Let's make it slick. Make it smooth. Don't want to overdo it, but that grease will hold on to that or stick to that, and it'll stay and make the, when you go to pop this open, that friction point right in there as this moves back and forth will be very smooth. Okay, now for that spring, that's what we're calling it today, that spring. I like to do this. Put it in just like that. This side is the short side. It's up against the end, and you can see it's got a little tip to it. We're going to pick it up and then drop it onto this little boss right there. Now, can you do it with just a couple of tweezers? Yeah, probably, if you're good. I'm not good. Hopefully I can show you this. I got the gloved finger, and I'm going to put it right over it. And my fingernail is on that screw hole holding that in. And I'm going to take my tweezers. Let's see if we can show you this. You can see where it's popped out of there. Now we're just going to pick it up. Come on. It's going to be a mule, aren't you? And once it's in there and pressed down flat, you can see how it's looking. As long as you don't mess with it. There's a good view. Look at that. Huh, pretty good view. That's a nice view of the keyless works without the lid on it. Is that thing really a lid? I don't know. But let's put it on. Let's not tempt fate. Have that spring get a mind of its own and say, yeah, I'm going to pop out now, and then you're screwed. Okay, let's see how we can do this so I can put it in and show you what's going on. Let's just drop it. A little bit about this. It's got two alignment dowels. There's one, there's the other. This is like a check, and then this is a spring. So this is picked up because of that spring load. And I like to take that gloved finger, put it right here in the middle, and press down on that while grabbing one of these tiny screws and getting it started. Okay, let's drop one of those in there. Yeah, I think I've had 14 cups of coffee this morning, so I got the shakes. It's okay. I can work through it. Now, to make sure we don't cross thread that, I'm going to push down, see how it flattened out, and I'm going to give that screw a turn. Freaking coffee. That's why doing these at night is easier. I'm all jacked up. Now you horse's ass. See, that's what happens. Took a dive. You can see it, at least it didn't go flying. And this is obviously going to extend this video. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. Come on, genius. Shh. There we go. Good thing we're not working on a high-end Swiss piece here. Alright. Yeah, fall through the hole. Good. I didn't want to do this tonight, so I'm doing it this morning. Because I'm hoping to start a 2414B this afternoon. Come on. Freaking coffee. Damn. Alright, where'd it go? Did I lose my screw? I did. It fell off. That's okay. Here we go. It just fell on the bench. So you can see, some of this work is rather tedious. You think those balance jewels are tough? Ay, ay, ay. These tiny screws can be a challenge, especially if you got the shakes. Once I get one in, I don't have to worry about holding it down. There you go. Look at that, genius. Let's get those other two in there. I might break this video up into 2 parts, just because this is taking some time. There's our other screw. There you go. For some reason, once I get one set, the other ones seem to take less time because you can use your other hand to steady your shaky hand from an overindulgence of caffeine. I'm shaking so much I need a drink to stop shaking so I can pour myself a drink. That's a joke. Okay, one more. Hopefully this one will go smoothly. Can you see it? I can't. Let me adjust my goggles. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. These do not get very tight. They're flathead screws. They are flush with that top plate. That's what I'm calling it. Now, I'm going to put a little, if you notice here, that lever, let's see, has to be, and this is important to check these because they can be a pain. See that right there? It's got to go. Let's see if I can do this for you. There you go. You can see it's snapped in. And I like to put a little lubrication on that because that is another friction point. Let's grease that up. Okay, give that a tug. There you go. Let's put some more in there. Okay. With that lubrication, okay, there's the winding, or the time settings part, and then we go over here. And that is the winding side. Okay, that's all for this side. Let's turn this bugger over. Now that the keyless works are captured, they're not going to fall out. Here's that winding gear right there. Okay. Now, let's put that gear in. It's a two-piece. You can see it's got that relief cut in there. And that's for this little guy to sit on top. And then it takes a screw that has a shoulder on it to bottom out. I like to take a little bit of grease, put it in there. That's it. That should do it. Just lay some grease in there. Take that and drop it in. That was a pretty precision fit last time. There you go. And the screw for this is left-handed. Not all. They don't always tell you with the slots milled into it that it's a lefty. I think I mentioned that before. So we're gonna go left, and it screws in. See that? Give that a turn. Look at that. Outstanding. Very nice. Okay. Now we have some grease here. I'm going to put a smear here and a smear there. And what's that in the middle of that screw hole? Piece of lint. Let's remove that. Okay. Drop in this gear. Notice the dot, or that little dot there milled into it. That indicates up. We're going to move our click so that's engaged. And we're going to screw that down. Where is my screw? There it is. This is a bigger headed screw. Standard thread. Turn it to the right and it'll tighten up. And as you tighten it, everything starts working together. Look at that. Now, how do you tighten this? Loosening it went against the click. Tightening it, going with it. I don't know the technical way to do it. I'll show you what I do. Take a thin blade and come in here like that and tighten it up. I don't think you're going to damage that gear because you're not torquing it that much. We're not building an engine here. Okay, there we go. Everything's working good. Okay. Now the next step I like to do is put that second-hand pinion in there. And I'll put a smear of grease on that second-hand pinion and then drop it in. I'll put some grease on that. Doesn't require a lot. There's actually a jewel in the middle of that gear. That might be a bit much. Okay, hopefully you can see this. We're going to drop that right in there. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to assemble the train. Gear train, I guess you call it. Sure, why not? Gear train. Alright, first piece, the escape wheel. Escapement wheel. Okay. that lays in that jewel. We're going to oil those jewels later. And our next gear, I think, is this one. Okay, let's go with it. And our last one is this guy, which is going to engage a number of things. These can be a little hairy too when you have the shakes. Okay. Everything is in there, lined up. All the teeth are engaged. If you start tugging on these, you're going to get movement and they're going to get out of whack. And you got to set them again. You got to kind of just eyeball these. Line it up. Because you really don't know if it's lined up. Because when you drop your bridge on and they don't line up, you got to do a little tinkering with that. I can see this is off. Okay, let's give this an attempt. This might take you some time. It might take me some time. I got the shakes. Okay. And we won't lubricate these till later. I kind of eyeball everything. And drop it in. You start forcing something, you're going to have trouble. Okay. Something's out of line. Looks like this one is. I'm going to give a little tappy tap here and there. You can see it's pivoting on something. It's a delicate operation. Okay, that one you can see the jewel, the shaft coming through the jewel. So that one's lined up. It's this second one. Because I think the escapement is good. Sometimes you can drop these on and they line right up. Other times, it's gonna fight you. Come on. And if you lean on it, you'll feel, hey, that thing ain't moving. Come on. Alright. Let's try this. Get a different view. Oops. That wasn't smart. Alright, people, just bear with me. I've had a couple of these where I just dropped it on and it fell right in. Literally took 2 seconds. Not today. Oh, did you hear that? It kind of went choop. Now, if you look closely, see if I can focus on that. Those jewels have a shaft poking out of them. Yeah, you can see them. And you can tell it's nice and slick because that bridge has no gap. The pins are lined up. I'm going to hold that down, and when you give the stem a turn, everything works nice and slick. We don't have lubrication on. Look at that, coasting down nice and easy. No lubrication on there, so you don't want to turn it too much. But the fact that everything's working slick and smooth, shafts are coming through those jewels, just the slightest touch, and that escapement wheel spins nicely, you're good to go. Okay. Even after I've done many of these, it can still take a long time to set that bridge. Other movements are easier to set just because of the configuration. Practice. Patience and practice. Sometimes I get just frustrated. I gotta walk away from this. It's making me nuts. And it could be that you're just in the wrong frame of mind. You don't want to break it. And if you do, you hope you got parts. There you go. Alright. Now, because everything's turning nice and freely, I'm going to lubricate those jewels because that'll give it a chance to work its way around onto the shafts. Looks like the oiler has quite a bit of oil on it, but I'm only using the tip. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Who knows? Okay. Nice having the shake for that. Shake that right in there. Okay. And then we're going to put a little shimmer. Those jewels are hollowed out. They're like little cups, little reservoirs. Turn this over and holds that grease. And we're going to do the same for this side. Let's line this up here. There's 3 right there. Well, there's 4 actually. The last one is the pallet fork. Pallet fork is going to get a different lube. You might want to do this with a high-powered loop to make sure it's in there. I can look at, and then you look at the way the light reflects, that you have lubrication in those jewel wells, I like to call them. And the last one. Okay. Let's turn that over. Got the train done. Give that a turn. Look at that, just one click and that thing moves. One little click. And it coasts pretty nicely. Looks pretty smooth. You can see that second hand pinion, how that is in fact indirectly driven. And that's going to be held in place by that spring. That spring can be a bit of a mule because of that spring has friction against that pinion. I like to put a tiny bit of grease on it. Okay. This is non-magnetic. It can be a squirrely bugger. If you have to, pick it up with some putty or Rodico. And the screw can be a bit of a cantankerous one at times, especially when you have the shakes. Oh, you horse's ass. See? I just took a dive. Pick it up with some Rotico. It didn't go far. Just landed on the bench. There we go. I know. Limit my caffeine intake next time I do this. Doesn't take much for these little springy things to launch from your project. See a piece of lint there too. There you go. Set that pin. Set it on that pin. Okay. Grab that tiny ass screw. Hopefully caffeine doesn't overcome me. Alright. That's the easy part. Steadying that and getting it in's a different one. I might have to end this soon and do a part 2. Look at that. All jacked up on caffeine. And it's looking good. Okay. We're on 46 minutes now. Everything's looking good. So let's take a break and I'll make the next video putting the rest of this together. I got a nice little technique for polishing the hands. So we'll get to that later. Alright, see you then.